Good afternoon. Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to this event. My name is James Graber. I'm the Coordinator for Sustainable Development Mechanisms in the United Nations Climate Change Secretariat. As we all know, climate change is one of the most significant changes facing us. A lot will need to be done. A lot needs to happen, as we know. We know right now, just across town, governments and concerned stakeholders are negotiating COP18, negotiating how to address this issue. But today we are here to work with one specific group of stakeholders' interests. The Global E-Sustainability Initiative has organized this event to launch its latest report affirming the potential of information and communication technology to enable the transition to a low-carbon economy. As you will hear, Jesse's SMARTer 2020 report shows that the ICT-enabled solutions offer a significant carbon abatement potential across many sectors of the economy. We will hear from two speakers today on the matter, followed by a question and answer session and a discussion. Our two speakers are Luis Neves, who is the chairman of the Global E-Sustainability Initiative and the Climate Change and Sustainability Officer, Executive Vice President at Deutsche Telekom. He has over 30 years of experience at the national and international level in the field of telecommunication and information society. He has played a fundamental role in promoting the role of ICT in the relationship to climate change. He was one of the driving force as a chairman of this, and he's a chairman of the steering committee of the landmark study SMART 2020, enabling a low-carbon economy in the information age. He currently holds positions and participates in a range of international projects and initiatives, including GESI, the UN Global Compact Group, and Steering Committee of the United Nations Caring for Climate Initiative. Our second speaker is Daniele Violetti, who's also, as I, working with the United Nations Climate Change Secretariat. He has more than 15 years of climate change experience related work. He's worked in the area of technology transfer, carbon markets, and mitigation efforts, just to name a few. He presently serves as a Chief of Staff for the UN Climate Change Secretariat. So with that, I'll turn it over to Luis, who will start us off.
Okay, James, thank you so much. Good afternoon. As you mentioned, it is our objective today to present the new landmark report, SMARTer 2020. I've already been introduced, so no need to say anything more about me. I would like to say a few words about GESI. For those of you who don't know GESI, the Global E-Sustainability Initiative, we are a strategic partnership of the ICT industry and international organizations committed to promoting technologies and practices that foster social and environmental sustainability. GESI represents today globally 32 of the world's leading service providers and vendors from the ICT sector. We also partner with a range of international organizations, including the ITU, the International Telecommunications Union, the UNEP, the United Nations Environmental Programme, the World Resources Forum Association, the World Resources Institute, Carbon Trust, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, the Club of Rome, Green Touch, and the STEP initiative. With those organizations, we work on sharing and developing ideas. We launch joint initiatives and we collaborate on projects within and outside the ICT industry. And through such partnerships and collaborations, GESI is seeking to implement its vision of creating a sustainable world through responsible ICT-enabled transformation. So, since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, human activity has driven annual greenhouse gas emissions higher by nearly 30,000%. The main force behind this increase is the burning of fossil fuels, such as coal and oil, to produce electricity, fuel our vehicles, and heat our homes. In 1750, CO2 emissions were 11 megatons and had reached 4,200 megatons by the end of the World War II. Unprecedented economic prosperity in the wake of the Second World War had pushed CO2 emissions to 22,500 megatons by 1990. over the past 2 decades, accelerated economic growth in developing countries and limited emissions abatement in developed economies pushed CO2 emissions to nearly 32,000 megatons by 2009. Though it's widely known that greenhouse gas emissions led to dramatic and widespread temperature changes around the globe, there are other destabilizing effects that could prove devastating towards climate. Weather patterns are changing, leading to extreme weather events such as tornadoes and droughts. Higher temperatures in polar regions are causing the melting of ice sheets while causing the death of rainforests in the tropics. CO2 absorbed by the oceans is leading to their acidification, threatening marine life and destroying coral reefs. All these changes are threatening animal species around the globe with extinction, and the extinction rate is 2 to 3 orders of magnitude higher than typical rate. There is arguably no greater threat posed to the globe in this century than that of climate change. While rising to the challenge seems daunting, addressing climate change while maintaining sustainable economic growth is possible. Information and Communications Technology, or ICT, provides such an opportunity. In the Global Sustainability Initiative's SMARTer 2020 report, 6 economic end-use sectors have been identified where ICT can be used to abate greenhouse gas emissions. The updated in-depth research in SMARTer 2020 now concludes that up to 16.5% of the global greenhouse gas emissions can be slashed by implementing ICT solutions throughout the economy, over 16% more savings than was calculated in the earliest study 4 years ago. Not only will these emissions reductions confer environmental benefits through greenhouse gas abatement, but will also yield huge economic savings. Preventing the release of 9.1 gigatons of CO2 is equivalent to reducing emissions from oil combustion by 21.6 million barrels of oil, which is enough oil to fill 106 million tanker trucks. The monetary savings from that level of energy savings is astonishing. At November 2012 oil prices, saving that much oil would save $1.9 trillion per year. That's equivalent to the annual economic output of Russia. The end-use sectors we've identified are as follows: agriculture and land use, buildings, manufacturing, power, service and consumer, and transportation. And within each of end-use sector, we've listed technologies or sub-levers that can be adopted to drive abatement. To give a couple of examples, within the agriculture and land use sector, ICT can abate emissions by reducing crop failure and wastage of fertilizer and water through smart farming. In the manufacturing sector, mechanizing industrial processes and coordinating them through ICT will reduce factory inefficiencies and emissions. And in the power sector, ICT can more effectively integrate renewable energy sources into the power supply, reducing reliance on electricity generated from highly polluting fossil fuels. All told, the technologies identified offer up to 9.1 gigatons of CO2 of abatement by 2020, which represents an emissions reduction of about 17% when compared to the business as usual case for emissions in that year. Emission reductions come from virtualization initiatives such as cloud computing and video conferencing, but also through efficiency gains such as optimization of variable speed motors in manufacturing and smart livestock management to reduce methane emissions, as well as 35 other ICT-enabled solutions identified in the study. Some ICT-driven solutions, such as smart electricity grids, reap benefits at the national level, while others, such as intelligent building management systems, can result in energy and cost savings for individual households and businesses. The 35 identified sublevers offer significant potential for abatement by 2020. In the power sector, the sublevers offer 2 gigatons of CO2 of abatement. In transportation, 1.9 gigatons of CO2 of abatement has been identified, 1.2 gigatons of CO2 of abatement in the manufacturing sector, 0.7 gigatons of CO2 in consumer and service, 1.6 gigatons of CO2 of abatement in agriculture, and another 1.6 gigatons of CO2 in the building sector. Nevertheless, it's important to remember that ICT also contributes to greenhouse gas emissions, and that these emissions are growing. As ICT has proliferated around the globe, emissions have grown substantially. Despite increases in energy efficiency, and direct emissions from ICT increased from about half a gigaton of CO2 to 9/10 of a gigaton between 2002 and 2011. As more people began to use ICT and usage by existing users grew significantly. By 2020, emissions are expected to increase another 40% from 2011 as these trends continue. It is important, however, to keep these emissions in perspective. The abatement potential of ICT at 9.1 gigatons of CO2 in 2020 is over 10 times the size of ICT direct emissions. But adoption of all these sublevers won't happen on its own, meaning there's an important role for policymakers to play in driving the uptake of greenhouse gas abatement technologies. Local and national policies directed at each of the sublevers based on a coherent global policy framework will be critical to ensuring that the decisions of individuals and businesses change in such a way to prioritize the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. So that means that we do need to implement those national measures. And as you can see in the SMARTer 2020 study, we have analyzed a couple of countries like Brazil, Germany, UK, India, China, where with a national policy framework, the ICT potential could drive a higher abatement realization. So it's clear that ICT is to play an integral role in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and addressing what could be the most critical challenge humanity faces in the 21st century. To become part of the solution and learn more about ICT-enabled greenhouse gas emissions abatement, we invite you to visit the JESI homepage and download the report. This is a fantastic report that really shows how ICT can give a huge contribution and how ICT really is an industry which is part of the solution to drive down carbon emissions. I do thank you for your attention, and I would also like to use the opportunity to thank the UNFCCC, the UNFCCC, and Danielle Violetti to be here today with us to support the launch of this study. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Luis. Now I'll turn to our next speaker for a few remarks. Daniele.
Thank you, James. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's really a pleasure to be here to join the JC to mark the launch of your SMARTer2020 report. It is clear from our other building here in Doha that governments really need to urgently ramp up ambition to cut greenhouse gas emissions and find more ways to do it and different means to do it. So reports like SMARTer2020 show how this can be done in a fast and smart way. These are very important information for us. The report we know describes the information communication technology ICT industry role in reducing emission leading up to 2020. It proves also that significant savings can be achieved by capitalizing on ICT-enabled solutions. Bottom line here is that the world needs to capture every last bit of energy efficiency and deploy clean energy if we have to keep below dangerous rises in temperature. So often in this conference in Doha, or in general in this climate change conference, we talk about ICT in terms of information collections, analysis and dissemination, modeling and simulation, and control of production processes. But let's leave for now this jargon behind for a moment and face the reality that normal people see, especially the young people. Technology is cool. Technology is something that is in the end of everybody, and it must help to keep us cool in a world of climate change. So we all constantly look at our phones, tablets, portable, because it is cool to stay informed, be in touch, and work more efficiently. Technology is clearly something that people enjoy using, so it's not going away, and it's a good thing for all of us in the future. So it's a never better thing that technology can make sizable contributions to the global response to climate change. And just to keep it in the same vein, I hope that you're sharing this discussion via Twitter, Facebook, with all your contact, and continue to have this type of dissemination information with ICT means. We all know that technology touches every part of our life, not because of what I just mentioned, but it's a powerful tool, a business tool that enables our modern technology and business. So your report that covers how CT solution can be implemented across the economy to reduce GHG emission, it is absolutely welcome. The reduction of emissions that can come through different sectors, being it power, transportation, manufacturing, consumer and services, agriculture, buildings, all these sectors are having big potential for reducing emissions. And those solutions outlined in your report cut across all this sector of the economy if they are implemented correctly, and they will reduce the carbon footprint of most of the world economies. Technology advances have already changed the dynamic of how goods and services are brought to the markets. These changes are, yes, cool, but they are also extremely profitable. Technology solution can be realized at every level, international, national, industry-wide, household, and individual. In this way, the ICT industry is a force multiplier in the fight against climate change. ICT solution to cut emission can equal, as your report is showing, more than 7 times the total of ICT sector-owned emissions. So if implemented, this solution equal about 16.5% of 2020 emission, which is comparable to another Kyoto Protocol in terms of size. So just gives the magnitude of the potential there. Being here at a climate change conference, I don't have, of course, to tell you all about the dangers of letting the earth warm. And then, of course, the response to this warming needs to ramp up both in terms of scale and speed and concrete steps that can be taken at a large scale. And what is possible to do now and what is possible to do tomorrow. For example, ICT solutions to improve energy efficiency with technology are crucial. The IEA latest World Energy Outlook concluded that 2/3 of economically viable energy efficiency in danger of remaining unrealized until 2035. So these are scary information. So if yet all these energy efficient measures, including those enabled by ICT, were implemented, we could postpone by 5 years the point at which global GHG exceed the level where dangerous climate change really takes off. There is always a cost, but it is estimated that 11.8 trillion spent on energy efficiency improvement would be offset by an 18 trillion boost to the world economy by 2035. So your numbers in your report show that ICT would contribute a huge part of this saving, $1.9 trillion to that. So this solution will not only be profitable, but also will create about 29.5 million jobs, and of course improve the standard of lives in all countries. So here we are facing a tremendous opportunity to save money, create jobs, and reduce emissions with ICT solutions. So the implementation of this solution should happen as soon as possible and as quickly as possible. It's a clear urgency of time pressure running against us. This investment can and will result in increased innovation as well. So then the challenge lies in getting the word out to the businesses in all sectors that stand to benefit. We will do our part at the Climate Change Secretariat to promote this smarter approach, and I hope you continue to do the same. And my executive secretary asked me to challenge you, because it's something that she always liked to do, and this, the challenge is how about raising the ICT impact as soon as possible to 14 times your industry emissions level. So there's a challenge there, and there is a feeling that you can do it. So with that, I would like to conclude and thanks you for being here, following live this launch of the report. And at the end, I can only say what is good for business, good for the climate, everybody wins. So let's do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniele, and thank you again, Louis. Well, if you allow me, maybe I'll ask each of you a question, and then turn to the audience if there are any further questions. Louis, you indicated that since the first report, SMART2020, that much has changed in the industry, and it's reflected in your report, SMARTer2020. What would you say are the top 3 developments or trends since 2008 that the general reader would like to know?
Well, yeah, indeed, many things changed since 2008. Let's say what really it's amazing is that within a 4-year period, our predictions when we issued the first SMART report, they have not only been confirmed, but they are even better. So at the time of that we launched the SMART report in 2008, the expectation was that ICT could reduce carbon emissions by 7.8 gigatons of CO2. This report is confirming that and is even going higher. And the prediction now is that the abatement potential of ICT, this enablement potential, is 9.1 gigatons of CO2. I cannot promise the 14 times more by 2020, but I'm deeply convinced that through more innovation, through more ICT deployment, through more cross-sectoral collaboration, because this potential can only be realized with cross-sectoral collaboration. We cannot do it alone. We are innovative, we have the solutions, we put the solutions into the market, but we need to work together with other industries, with manufacturing, with agriculture, with energy, and so on. And this collaboration is not yet there. I think that the industries are somehow working back to back. It cannot go like that. So we need really to strengthen our relationship to realize this potential and go even higher. So I already mentioned one. Let's say our predictions are going higher. The second impact, which is really amazing to us, is that although everybody was talking that ICT had a huge footprint, and we do have an important footprint, but our footprint is coming down instead of going up. So, in fact, we are deploying more ICT all around the world. You see more and more ICT solutions being implemented. So one could expect with the data traffic in our networks that our footprint would be increasing, but no, it's decreasing. So that means we are being much more efficient efficient than we were before. So we are walking the talk as an industry. And therefore, that's also good news for the climate agenda. So the innovation that we are putting in place, it's right. Then you see also that there is an increasing trend in social networking. You have more people on the network, you have the Twitters, the blogs, everything is moving around. And with all that, we are still being efficient and bringing down emissions. So I think we have proved our ability both to help other sectors and also to walk the talk and drive down our emissions. And I think this is the key message of this report. It's acting responsibly as an industry sector and also helping other sectors to give their contribution to the climate problem that we are all facing.
Thank you, Louis. Let me turn to Daniele now. We just heard about how additional collaboration in the industry and what's happening on the industry side. But Daniele, what would you say needs to be done to increase the attention to the parties, to the governments, to the people here that are negotiating? How can they go about increasing the level of knowledge around what ICT can do in terms of climate change mitigation?
Yeah, thanks, James. I think that this question touches a fundamental overall point that we are facing in the discussion, in the process. For too long, in my personal view, it seems that governments are discussing in one room and the rest of the world is outside, and there is little communication in these crucial moments between the two parts in a way that enables a dialogue, but also working together on the solutions. We do know that for sure whatever decisions are taken, at the end those that will be implementing are definitely the private sector and all the other stakeholders at the national or international level. So there is a need to bridge this communication gap, at least to avoid this situation. A certain point, and it's positive that is happening, in the new process that has been launched last year in Durban in the ADP, there is already a room under the work stream 2 that enables contribution to raising the ambition to other stakeholders in a way. This is a very early stage. It's something that is not yet there, but it's something that is possible, it's going to happen. So in general, initiative like this, a report like this that show that it's possible, it's doable, achievable, is something really important. So the question is, again, how we can make sure that this is on the agenda so that it's more visible. So it's a lot of work to be done in this, something that, James, you are definitely an expert there as well in the carbon markets. Solution coming from the ICT sector have not been fully exploited so far. It's something that can be done more in that area on concrete projects. And as I say, what is at the end, in my view, needed is really a better understanding of the roles at play here.
Thank you, Daniele. Now I'll turn to the audience if there are any questions for our two speakers.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Ngisa Fuatai Purcell from the ITU. I'm the head for LDCs, SITs, and all those countries with special needs, as well as emergency telecommunication and climate change adaptation. I'm very excited to be here, although that I missed the beginning, but I'm happy that your message is about the role of ICTs. And our session in partnership with ICT Qatar is next. And we're also talking about the same thing. We all know, and it is well publicized, that 10% increase in broadband penetration contributes to 1.8 of GDP growth. And as I've heard the speakers, ICT is fundamental in driving and implementing all these climate change issues, the plans that the countries have done. But I haven't seen a lot of, let me put it this way, ICT is not a priority in any of the COPs so far. So my question is, why is ICT not highlighted as the one of the key priorities? Because of all the good things that you have spoken about in your presentations, that ICT can help with all these so that we can live in a better world.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I can get a first cut at it, and it's basically following up my point on the lack of clear communication between the two sides here. On governments, one side, perhaps they have this awareness at their own national level, but not in the context seen on the global picture. And at the same time, the difficulties that the private sector is having is reaching out to governments to demonstrate the potential, the full potential of this deployment of this solution. So I think, and that's why we are also engaging ourselves with our limited space and resources to make this type of activity visible, to see that it's possible, is achievable, and has actually already been done. So it's a matter really of making it more as a part of the solution.
Well, if I may add something, I could not concur more with you. So it would be my ambition, or our ambition as at the Global Sustainability Initiative, to have ICT on the global agenda, and we have been cooperating with UNFCCC in a very constructive manner. So when it comes to talking with Cristiana Figueres or Daniel Violetti or the people at UNFCCC, we see that they are open to speak with us and to understand, and also to promote the role of our sector, which is good. Then to bring that to the table, it's a different challenge. I must say that part of the problem was raised by Daniel Violetti here, and the ICT sector or the ICT industry has not yet been able, within the global industry framework. So when it comes with the International Chamber of Commerce, so if you look at the European Roundtable of Industrialists or other industry organizations, the ICT has not really a presence there. If you think about the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, which is going to the G8, G20 and so on, ICT is not there. So it's not there. Why? Because our companies are not there as members. So it is also very much linked with membership. And I think that we need to reverse that situation. We need to use more the ITU, the International Telecommunications Union, to drive our agenda. We need a stronger cooperation with the ITU. The ITU actually has a seat at the JESI board, we are extremely happy with that. And we need to strengthen this relationships to make sure that we do have ICT on the global agenda.
Thank you, Daniele. Thank you, Louis. Are there any further questions for our speakers today?
Hello, my name is Christy K. Mark. I'm from the Rand Qatar Policy Institute, and I do science, technology, and innovation policy research here in Qatar. I'd like to thank you first for your presentation, and I look forward to reading the report online. As you know, Qatar is a small country, small population, but there's some opportunities in Qatar that may not be at other places in terms of adoption of some of these ICT policies that could support GHG reductions in that way. There's a commitment right now of 2.8% of government revenues to research, and Qatar has recently opened a new research institute focused on information technology and computing. So I was wondering from you, when you talked about some of the barriers to adopting these mechanisms, where do you see a small country like Qatar could overcome these barriers or not have the same barriers to adoption that some of the bigger countries may have?
I think it's more for you.
It's more for me, but I think actually probably it's more for the next session because we have here also a representative from the ICT sector. Let's say, generally speaking, I cannot, I'm not qualified to give a straight answer about Qatar. But when we look at barriers in terms of adopting more ICT, I already mentioned that there is a lack of understanding about the potential in terms of the relationship between the ICT industry and the other sectors. It seems to me that there are fears that need to be overcome. There are not many companies that like to, I would say, to jump up in the air and to do a step to the unknown, and the ICT does it very, very often. So there are many industries which they always have to identify the business case for it, otherwise they will not move forward. And we also have a general problem which is related with behavior. So we need to change our behavior as human beings as well. And I'm not talking against ICT, but I give you an example. In terms of behavior, every single one of us, we always strive to have the best device that comes to the market. But when we are doing that, we are having an impact in terms of resources. And resources, they are not endless. So we cannot continue to live in this way. And the issue of resources can also be tackled through ICT. So we need our devices to have a longer life, definitely. Otherwise, we will be undermining our planet resources. We are living 1.5 above the planet. But in the US, we are living, I think it's 5 times, and in Europe, 3. And this is not sustainable. So we need to change. And ICT actually can provide for a better lifestyle, a sustainable lifestyle. And we are supposed to move on that direction, but that requires a complete behavioral change from everybody. We need to think in another way, and companies also need to identify different business models which go in a sustainable direction, not short-term, long-term driven, and by doing that, ensuring the sustainability of the planet, because if there is no sustainability in the planet, there is no company or industry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. Well, if there are no further questions, then I'd like to thank our speakers today, and I look forward to hearing more about the initiatives and Jesse's work. Thank you.
Thank you so much.